Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there stood a magnificent castle upon a green hill. Its white stone towers reached toward the sky, topped with roofs of the deepest blue. Golden flags danced in the gentle breeze, and the royal gardens bloomed with flowers of every color. In this castle lived a wise and kind king who had several daughters. But it was his youngest who captured the hearts of all who saw her. She was the most beautiful princess in all the kingdom, with hair like spun gold and eyes as blue as the summer sky. The young princess had everything her heart could desire. She wore the finest silk dresses and a delicate tiara. Yet, despite all her beauty and riches, the princess was somewhat spoiled, for she had never been denied anything. Among all her treasures, there was one the princess loved above all others. It was a ball made of pure gold. Perfectly round and polished, it gleamed like a tiny sun. This was her favorite thing in the world. On warm summer days, the princess would wander into the cool forest that bordered the kingdom. There, hidden among ancient trees, lay a clearing where an old stone well sat. The well was covered with soft green moss and surrounded by colorful wildflowers. The water inside was so deep and so clear that no one could see its bottom. Golden sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating dancing patterns on the forest floor. This peaceful place was where the princess loved to spend her afternoons, tossing her golden ball into the air. One beautiful afternoon, the princess sat at the edge of the well, playing with her beloved ball. She threw it higher and higher, delighting in the way it sparkled against the blue sky. Each time it fell, she caught it easily and laughed with pure joy. But then, she threw the ball just a little too high. It arced through the air, spinning beautifully. When it came down, it did not land in her hands. It bounced on the stone edge of the well. Before she could react, it rolled over the side and disappeared into the dark water below. The princess gasped and rushed to peer into the well. She watched her treasure sink deeper and deeper. Its glow faded into darkness. She began to weep bitterly, believing she would never see it again. As her tears fell, a small voice rose from the well. The princess looked up in surprise. She saw a small green head emerge from the dark water. It was a frog with bright green skin. But this was no ordinary frog. Upon his head sat a tiny golden crown. His large eyes were the color of pure gold, holding a strange sadness and wisdom. The frog climbed onto the mossy edge and gazed at the princess with curiosity. He had heard her crying and wished to know what troubled her so deeply. Through her tears, the princess explained that her golden ball had fallen into the well. It was now lost forever in the dark water below. The frog listened carefully. The frog made her an offer. He could dive down and retrieve her precious ball. But in return, he asked for something special. He did not want gold or jewels. Instead, he wished for her friendship. He wanted to be her companion. He wanted to sit beside her at dinner, eat from her plate, and sleep on her pillow. The princess thought his request was ridiculous. How could a frog be her companion? But she wanted her ball desperately, so she quickly agreed without truly meaning it. The frog dove into the water and soon emerged with the golden ball. The princess grabbed it and ran away without even thanking him. The frog called after her, By the next evening, the princess had completely forgotten about the frog and her promise. She sat in the grand dining hall, preparing to enjoy a magnificent feast. Crystal chandeliers cast warm, golden light over the table, covered with fine dishes. Then, a strange, wet sound echoed through the castle. Something was climbing the stairs. It was like small feet on stone. Then came a gentle knocking at the great door. The princess rose to see who it could be. When she opened the door, her heart sank. There sat the little frog, looking up at her with those sad golden eyes. He had traveled all the way from the forest to remind her of the promise she had made. The princess quickly shut the door and returned to her seat, her face pale with worry. Her father, the king, noticed her troubled expression and asked what had frightened her. Reluctantly, the princess told him everything about the frog and the promise she had made. The king listened with a serious expression. When she finished, he spoke firmly but gently. He explained that a promise made must always be kept, no matter how difficult it might seem. A princess must be honorable and true to her word. He instructed her to welcome the frog. With great reluctance, the princess obeyed her father. She opened the heavy door once more. The little frog hopped proudly into the grand hall. He looked small, yet held his head high. The frog asked to be lifted onto the table so he could sit beside the princess. She hesitated with displeasure, but finally reached down and lifted the cold, damp frog. She placed him on the table beside her golden plate, and so began the strangest dinner. The little frog ate from the princess's plate and sipped from her crystal cup. The princess could barely eat, watching him with a mixture of disgust and frustration. Yet the frog behaved with surprising grace. His golden eyes watched her with hope and patience. When the feast ended, the frog reminded her of the last part of her promise. He was tired and wished to sleep on her soft pillow, just as she had agreed. The princess carried the frog up to her beautiful bedroom. Moonlight streamed through the windows. Her canopied bed stood draped in pink silk curtains. Everything was soft and beautiful. The little frog looked completely out of place in this elegant room. As they reached the bed, all of the princess's frustration finally boiled over. She could no longer contain her anger. In a moment of pure emotion, she confronted the frog. Then, something magical occurred. In a burst of golden light, the frog began to change. His small form grew and shifted before the princess's astonished eyes, surrounded by sparkles. Where the frog had been, there now stood a handsome prince with warm eyes and a kind smile. The prince bowed deeply and explained his story. A wicked witch had cursed him long ago. He was condemned to live as a frog until a princess would keep her promise to him. He thanked her for finally honoring her word, for it had broken the spell at last. The princess felt ashamed of how she had treated him. She realized her mistake. She learned that true worth cannot be seen on the surface. Kindness matters most. The next morning, a golden carriage arrived to take them to the prince's kingdom. And so they rode away together toward a future filled with happiness and love. The princess never forgot the lesson she learned, and they all lived happily ever after.